Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Bare Hands Podcast. I'm Daniel,
And I'm Wade.
and we're glad you're still listening. It's not just us here. Our producer made it this week.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Good to see you, man. Good to see both of you guys. How y'all been?
Pretty
Good. How about you, Daniel?
Good. Just went on an exciting road trip that I think we're going to have a chance to talk about today.
Let's wet our whistle before we get going.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not get too ahead of ourselves.
If you're
here.
still listening from the beginning, you know that the first thing we're going to do every week is introduce a new drink. And I just got back from a road trip, and this week is Tin Cup Whiskey. Have y'all had this before?
I
Aaron?
have.
It's named after Kevin Costner, right?
Something like that.
Okay.
If you pour it, they will drink it.
No,
No,
I
that's
think
not how
it's
it goes.
Draft day?
he's really good at golf but bad at life.
Right, that's
Whiskey?
what it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, so the reason I bought y'all this drink is the first time I really remember going to Colorado in high school, maybe right after high school, my grandpa was with us and we got this just as kind of like a commemorable item to Colorado. It's not actually made in Colorado, it's made in Indiana, I believe. I'll read it to
Good day.
Whiskey, Tin Cup Whiskey is a blend of two great American whiskeys, each aged in a number 3 charred oak barrel high rye bourbon, distilled and aged in Indiana. It's blended with a small amount of Colorado single malt whiskey. These whiskeys are then cut with Rocky Mountain water. It's named for the Colorado mining pioneers and the tin cups for which they drank their whiskey. So each one of these whiskeys comes with a little tin shot glass here.
Oh, cool.
So just kind of a throwback to the miners that drank out of the tin cups. So
Heck yeah.
R.I.P. miners.
one of my stops on my recent road trips was
I don't know if they're all dead. I think they're still
Eventually they'll die. I
there's a
mean,
bunch of coal miner daughters out there though. A lot of
R.I.P.
songs written on
R.I.P. everyone, according to Wade.
So here you go, guys, to grandpas and road
Eventually.
trips, to the miners out
grandpas and road trips. I
Grandpas
like
road
that.
there. Yep.
Hard
That'll be
work-
the best
hard
toast I've heard all
working-
day.
Hard-working men in the mines.
Yep. Like it?
Delicious.
Apparently those miners were tough.
Or you're just really soft. Listen to enough of these episodes and that'll go down like water.
Don't be 10-ply, bud. Come on.
Yeah, so I got that on the way home, but that was probably the last stop that I made. So I went on a national park tour. Some people will call it the Utah Mighty Five. I added a couple of extra national parks just because I left from Texas. What you do is you make a big circle around Utah, Grand Canyon, which Darren's been before. We'll talk about that too. Wade might have been to some. I don't know if he's been to any yet or not.
National parks?
Yeah.
Very few.
Have you been to Big Bend yet?
No.
Man, I've been to all these national parks now, like 9 on this trip. That one's still my favorite. We got it pretty good here in Texas.
Amen.
So you can fly into Las Vegas and rent an RV, rent a camper, and you can do this exact same trip that I did. Or if you live like we do from Texas, you can drive that way or wherever you're from and just make the loop.
So did you keep up with your miles?
Yeah.
Like how many miles?
So by the end of this thing, I had done 3,500 miles. It was 34 something, so I just rounded up to say 3,500 miles. And I
So
did
that's
it,
about 30 hours worth of driving?
yeah, maybe a little bit more than that. something
About
like that.
about an oil change worth of driving.
Yep. In 12, 13 days.
you
I think
play by the book.
I was gone for 13 days. So 3,500 miles, 13 days, 8 national parks from Tejas. And it was a camping trip. So first thing I did is I left Aubrey, Texas, and just drove all day long. Drove through our wonderful panhandle, straight across the great state of New Mexico, crossed the border into Arizona, and almost as soon as you cross the border, you hit the Petrified Forest National Park. But I got there probably 9 o'clock at night, so pretty much the first thing I did was pull over into a parking lot and car camp that night.
I was in Arizona.
Yep, just right on the border. So probably a 13-hour drive from here, and it was just all day driving just to get to this
I wish I'd have
area.
known that. I wish I'd have known that was there. I would have stopped.
I know. I'm sure we'll have multiple podcasts over how you find things on the road.
Yeah.
Or
So the
like
border of Arizona and where?
New
New
Mexico, or like I want to do like another podcast one time over like apps that I use when I go hunting or when I travel and stuff. So that'll be a good one day.
Onyx.
Yeah. So for this one, I just got on Google Maps and just typed in national parks, looked at an image thing, and found this one right on the corner of New Mexico and Arizona. So I drove all night and camped right outside the park. There's no campsites in the park, so if you're gonna go to the Petrified Forest National Park, you're either gonna have to road camp, which is what I did, just slept in my car, or get a hotel. There's a couple of them real close by, really cheap.
Wonder why there's no campsites.
It's just such a small national park.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot to do there. It's really interesting and really entertaining, but it's just not one you'd
So
spend
did
multiple
you-
days at unless you're backpacking.
Did you get to stay long enough to like learn about the wood and?
Yeah, so day one, I drove all the way to New Mexico or Arizona. I slept in the parking lot. Woke up the next day. The park opens, I think, at 8 o'clock, and they keep the gates closed. So at 8 o'clock, I got in, and it's a pretty short national park. I want to say it's like maybe 20 to 30 miles long. And most people, what you do is you just drive a scenic loop through the park, and you start on the north side of the highway, and you just drive, and you can get out and look at over some like overlooks of the just beautiful area. There's a lot of like Indian writings and stuff
Yeah,
that
there's
are
a lot of tribal land out that way. Once you
very
cross,
interesting. I mean, it's just like any national park. It's beautiful.
yeah.
So did you get to like learn about the actual wood that's petrified? What kind of wood that is?
Yeah, but surprisingly, not till like the end of the park. So you're gonna have to do the whole loop. So when you get to the park, you're gonna first stop is probably gonna be the visitor center, where you learn about the park and then get your souvenirs, and then you just keep going. And so by the end of it, you've checked out all your overlooks. There's one hike at the very end, and it's called the Crystal Forest Trail. It's just a 1 mile loop, and you just park your car and just take on a leisurely hike, and you can actually walk through these petrified trees, which I don't know if I just had my expectations really low, but it was actually awesome to see these like millions of year old petrified trees that have now turned into solid quartz.
So is there whatever wood that was that's petrified? Are there still real trees growing like that?
Yeah, so when I picture the petrified forest, I honest to God was expecting trees. Like I really thought there was going to be a
So there's
forest.
no trees.
Nope,
anymore.
it's a desert land, so I'm not smart enough to remember all this.
Right.
So I wrote this down. So this is straight from the National Park website because I wanted to explain to you what a petrified tree was, and I obviously am
I
not
guess
smart
that
enough
was
to
my
remember.
Question or whatever.
So this is from their website. It says over 200 million years ago, these logs were washed into an ancient river system and were buried quick enough and deep enough by massive amounts of sediment that oxygen was cut off and decayed slowed to a process that would now take centuries. It says mineral absorbed into the porous wood over hundreds and thousands of years, crystallized, replacing them, and broke down over time. And basically these logs turned into jewel-like crystals, which are quartz now.
Huh.
So they're beautiful rocks from trees.
So my dad's family's from Lufkin, Texas, and they had a little bit of land, a few acres or whatever. My great grandfather had a dairy or whatever, but the part that my grandmother inherited had a pond on it, and she dug up a petrified stump,
Wow.
and it was a palm tree. Well, there's not palm trees for miles and miles from East Texas. Like, I mean,
Right.
down at the coast. So that's what I was curious to find out if there was actually, like, say it was a petrified oak tree. Are
Yeah.
there still oak trees growing there? But this sounds like these were
So,
washed to this area.
This tree that are in that area are a tree I can't pronounce. They're extinct now. But yeah, most of these national parks were basically oceans at some point that have over time have risen up so much that they're land now. It's crazy what
Okay.
our Earth has been through.
But that petrified palm tree stump is so significant in my life because my grandfather smoked, but he didn't smoke in the house. So when I was a kid, we'd go out on the porch and I'd sit on this petrified
That's awesome.
palm tree stump while he smoked, and I always thought, I'm sitting on a palm tree in the middle of Texas, and there's no palm trees anywhere around here. So,
Where at in Texas? Where's that?
well, it was found in Lufkin, Texas.
Yeah.
But when I was sitting
when
on
you were
it,
sitting on it, it was in
G-Town.
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 One
Gainesville,
team,
Texas?
one goal. No, it's Garland.
Garland. God, I always forget.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah. So my grandma,
I skipped that part just so you wouldn't say anything.
my great grandmother or my great great grandmother used to live in Jasper, Texas, and they found a bunch of petrified wood out there, and like in the creeks, dried up creeks and stuff. So growing up my entire life, my mom had this huge collection of petrified wood that she used that like line her gardens around the house. Yeah, pretty cool.
So kind of random, but they have a superstition or stories that they tell at the park. I don't know if it's to keep you from stealing the stuff or if it's real, But they tell you that people have stolen the wood from them, and like enough bad stuff has happened to them that they've literally gotten stuff back in the mail. Like they don't want it anymore. So they try to encourage you not to steal it or take it. But the
That's
second
made
you
up.
leave the park, you're gonna pass about 20 different places selling petrified wood
Oh,
if
really?
you want to take some back home with you. But yeah, so I got to this park at 8, and it's a short, quick, beautiful park. I was done in maybe 2 hours. Like,
Did you buy some petrified wood?
no, my
Oh,
little
man.
car was loaded down, or I probably would have. It was beautiful. So I left there about 10:30, like day one. It's a very short trip, like I said, and I was on my way to the Grand Canyon next. I wanted to get there for day one. So on my way there,
This is the one I want to go see more
I'm a
than any
big
of them.
fan of Route 66. Like I love going to like old towns and eating at diners or
I heard
small
it's where you
town
get your
restaurants.
kicks.
Yeah, I got a few. And I stopped and stood on a corner in Winslow, Arizona for lunch. Yeah.
There you go.
So day one, after going to the Petrified
Did
Forest,
you get a picture of you?
Yep, stood on a corner in Winslow, Arizona, and there's a cool brewery and a restaurant right on the corner.
And we're back. And luckily, we listened to our at-home emergency podcast, so we were able to put out the fire that the smoke alarm indicated that we had.
The false fire.
There actually was no fire. I think it's just Daniel's stories about his trip are so hot
Yeah.
it set off the fire alarm.
There you
Or,
go.
while we're on the subject of fire alarms, every 6 months, guys, change out the batteries.
Change those batteries out. Keep them from beeping at you.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we left the Petrified Forest National Park, stopped in Winslow, Arizona.
Dude, that's awesome.
It was a pretty fine sight to see, let me tell you. I had a beer, had some burgers on the corner, and then I had met a couple at the gate to the entrance of the Petrified
Met a
Forest National
girl,
Park.
my lord, in a flatbed for. Nope.
So they do have a flatbed
Hey-o,
Ford
there
on
we
the
go.
corner, and they have a girl in the front seat. It's a big thing. There's nothing else in the town, but
you go.
it's worth a picture and a.
That's
food.
hilarious. I'm thinking about going there just to take my picture there.
So a couple. I was just gonna drive the south entrance to the Grand Canyon because I didn't know any better. And this couple had told me like, if you have the time, go through the east entrance. And I had went to Flagstaff because the first thing I wanted to do was fill up my coolers with food and water. Go to Walmart there.
Been to that Walmart?
Yeah, it was awesome. I had covered parking at a Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
So
Lots of hell.
It's bougie. It's a bougie Walmart.
yeah.
It's the only
Got
ones I
solar
go to.
panels and stuff.
Mhm.
It's nice. Yeah, so I took the east entrance in instead of the traditional southern entrance, which ended up being the best decision ever. Because if you take the east entrance in, the Grand Canyon is actually significantly larger than just the national park. So if you take the east entrance in, you're just driving the rim the whole time.
Mhm.
And once you actually get to the national park, you can start stopping at all the scenic overlooks. So like I had went to the Petrified Forest that morning, went to lunch, so I didn't get there till like 3. So that gave me enough time to start hitting the scenic overlooks and then go straight to my campsite, set up my campsite day one, and then I went out and watched the sunset over the Grand Canyon. Did you do that when you went?
Yeah, so when
Because
we
you and your wife went, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, we went for our 10-year anniversary, actually. Dropped the kid off with mom and dad, and we took off and drove to the Grand Canyon. And so our first thought was, oh, we're going to tent camp in the Grand Canyon. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
But it's Arizona. It's going to be super hot. Let me
What
tell
time?
you.
Y'all are
This
anniversary
is-
is July 4th,
yeah,
right? Did y'all
yeah.
go on your anniversary?
Yeah, we went July 4th
Wait.
week.
Your actual anniversary is July 4th?
Yeah, we got married July 4th.
'Cause America.
1776?
Yeah.
Because America.
We're American.
Amen.
It's also the probably the cheapest date to book a venue.
Ah,
Get
the
married
truth comes out.
Yeah, you get married at 10 o'clock in the morning on July 4th. Save a lot of money. And you get fireworks every year for anniversary, so bonus. Yeah, so we went to the south entrance and drove into there, and we stayed in the national park on the south side there. So I didn't know there's like a whole town,
Yeah, it's awesome.
like right before you get into the park. So if you're too bougie to camp, you can
Yeah,
actually
oh,
stay
yeah.
in a hotel.
Yeah.
Like there's a Holiday Inn right outside of the park
Right.
you can go to. If your kids aren't interested, whatever. There's like bowling alleys and there's a Starbucks there, and like it's a whole place. But we got there and thinking it was gonna be, super hot because it's Arizona.
Yeah.
Got down to like 42 degrees the first night. So the next day they were doing a big 4th of July event in Flagstaff. So we drove to Flagstaff and did the 4th of July thing, and we went to Walmart, same Walmart you went to buy comforters and extra blankets. 'cause
Right.
we were freezing our butt off. We have sleeping bags. We're negligent.
Yeah, so later on in the podcast, when we switch from my trip to what we're going to talk to y'all about today, I'm going to tell you how I stay warm in a tent.
Yeah.
And I think Darren's probably going to switch to this also.
Yeah.
But you learn a lot when you're camping. You know?
Oh yeah,
Like,
I mean, and that was
anything.
that was probably one of our, I don't know, second or third, like our first out of state big camping trip, but like our second or third 4 or 5 day
Right.
camping trip. So we definitely learned a lot there.
So as far as
It was
national
beautiful.
parks go, we'll say Petrified Forest is a beginner park. Grand Canyon is more towards like an intermediate park.
Yeah.
Just because there's a lot of thinking you have to do when you go to the Grand Canyon that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
One thing I did know about is everything right now with the whole COVID situation and pre-COVID, but especially since COVID started, is reservations.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one really good campsite inside of the Grand Canyon National
I heard that's
Park.
always been a big deal in Arizona, though.
What's that?
Reservations.
Can we count that? Can we count that as Wade's joke of the day?
Yes.
We don't have to go through the joke, right?
Yeah.
That was it. Okay. God.
Yeah, so the biggest campground in there is called Mather Campground. And that's probably where you stayed
Yeah,
if you
that's where
stayed
we-
in the park.
That's where you know
And
my
this
wife.
thing
She
books
She
out-
plans like years in advance for things.
And I did too because of this whole national park thing that's going on.
Yeah.
Because of COVID and pre-COVID. But so Mather Campground is the campground that's in the park.
Yep.
But if you don't like camping, or if you just want a more leisurely trip, there's a
Yeah.
bunch of hotels inside the park. There's some really cool historic
There's-
cabins
there's a
on
bunch
the
of-
rim.
Yeah, there's a bunch of cool cabins you can stay at. We didn't know until we got there, but there's a bunch of cool cabins. There's like a really cool historic hotel in the park that
There's
used
a
to have a
restaurant.
train that
There's a
goes
grocery
through.
store.
Yeah,
It is a
it's a
big
very,
tourist house. It's been like
Yeah.
that for 100 years now.
yeah, and right outside the park is where it's a little more. Inside the park is very like, I don't know, like the cabins there don't have air conditioner.
Right.
You know, they're not. They're cabins, but they're not like bougie. You stay outside the park, you can stay in. Like straight up, you can stay in Holiday Inn.
Yeah, so my itinerary was I had potentially 2.5 days there, and my initial plan was I was gonna backpack down into the bottom of the Grand Canyon and stay on the Colorado River,
Heck no.
and then backpack out the next day. But I didn't realize that. So to do that, you have to have a backcountry permit, and backcountry permits right now are like 6 months out. So if you do want to backpack to the bottom, let them know way ahead of time.
It's
Normal
also-
reservations aren't like that, but the backcountry permits, they're already very few, and plus they're limiting them down to like 20%, so it's hard to get one.
So I've never even heard of a backcountry permit. What is that? That just allows you to camp in the Grand Canyon?
Yeah, so
Wait, I don't mean this offensively. You and I are not going to make it down and back up from the Grand Canyon right now in today's world.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what else can you do with this permit?
you can go rafting and then camping at the bottom. That's in the Grand Canyon. Those
So
are
even
kinda-
if you go rafting with like one of the guide
yeah, you're gonna
people
need
that
permits.
You got to have.
No, if
but
you go with a guide, you won't.
when
It's
you
a
say-
national park.
When you set it
it's
up,
our park.
Yeah,
No.
ask
And we have to get
Have
a
you ever seen the
permit?
Alexander Supertramp?
when you set it up, like when you set the trip up with your guide, like that's part of the fee and that's part of the. They get you the permit and stuff to do it. So we looked into because my wife's a bit,
So you might not have to do 6 months in advance other than just a reservation with.
Yeah, but even
the
those
guide.
sell out early. I'm telling you, if you want to go national park, so there's
Yeah, right now,
that
book
book
way
that was
early.
made into the movie about the guy,
120.
Alexander Supertramp Into the Wild. I forgot his real name now.
I don't. Looking it up. Don't worry.
So he actually gripes in the movie because he goes to the Grand Canyon with his own kayak, and he's like, "This is a national park. How am I not able to go to the river?
Yeah.
I have a permit." He's like, "But this doesn't make sense."
That ticks me off.
But at the same time, I get it. They want to limit the number of people down there to like protect the land and protect every experience. I don't know. I get it.
Well, I mean,
Chris
there
McCann-
needs
But
to be
it
there
just
needs to be
means-
some oversight, but
It
I
just
mean,
makes it to where you just need to plan a lot further out in advance. But you don't need that for a normal campsite at the rim. And you can still backpack down there or hike down there. So what I did is I showed up day one. I took the east entrance. Thanks, Darren. His name is Chris McCandles.
Chris-
Into the Wild.
Yeah, Chris McCann.
It's an awesome
Into
movie.
the Wild. Yeah.
Watch that before you go in a national park. It'll really inspire you, honestly. Yeah, so I took the east entrance in and just checked out the overlooks. camped at the Mather campground, watched a beautiful sunset on the rim that night. If you don't do anything, watch a pretty sunset, order some pizza and watch a sunset. Anywhere you pick is beautiful. Yeah. And then the next morning I woke up with the intention of, if I was able to get a permit, I was going to hike down into the bottom and then camp and then hike back out the next day. But since I didn't get a permit, there's 2 trails you can take, and I wrote them down right beside me so I wouldn't forget.
So we went down.
Bright Angel.
We went down into, I don't know what trail it was. The trail that they take the horses and
Bright
donkeys
Angel.
down
That's the
into.
one I did. I couldn't remember. So there's the South Kaibab
the
and the
same
Bright
one?
Angel.
That's the one they take the horses and stuff down. So we did that, and we went like a mile and a half down.
That's what I did.
And I looked back, or maybe a mile, because we didn't go as far as you, because you said there was a checkpoint, and I didn't make it to that checkpoint. I know that I looked up, and I looked at my wife, and I was like, yeah, we had to double this. So back up.
The Grand Canyon is incredible. I mean, like,
yeah.
I've heard people
Coolest
say,
trip
like,
I've ever been on,
it's
for
like,
sure.
you just go look over the rim, and then you're like, well, now what do I do? And you could do that and be bored out of your mind. But
Yeah,
it's
but
so
that's not
vast,
the point.
and it's so beautiful. And when you get there, the first thing you do is you see that river, and you just feel this sense of adventure, and you're like, I want to be on that river. I want to like do something awesome. Like, it's so cool. So I obviously didn't have the time or the there's signs everywhere. Don't try to hike down and hike back up in one day. Like, even though it's cold at the top, it's horribly hot at the bottom. So the South Kaibab Trail, there's rest points at 1.5 miles, 3 miles, 6 miles, and then the river. And then if you think I don't know if I can go to 1.5 miles, don't even try it, because every step you take down, you got to take back up. So I just walked down to 1.5 miles, and it was beautiful. And then I walked back out.
It's 6 miles down, which you look at that and you're like,
Phantom Ranch, I think that's the name.
That's not bad. But you look at 6 miles straight back up, it's like, it looks impossible from the bottom.
So what's the I mean, I've done that in the mountains, and it's even harder because of the thin air or whatever.
It's the same thing. I mean, you're at elevation there too.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just
what is the elevation of the rim?
I don't know. The thing about it is, it's just every step you take down.
Yeah.
You know, you're just coming back up, so it's just a pain.
That's going anywhere though.
So yeah, if you go to the Grand Canyon, a couple things is just make sure you make plenty of reservations in advance.
6,804 feet is Grand Canyon elevation. So not quite as high as Rocky Mountains, but you're still
enough to where us flatlanders are feeling it.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah.
So I come out on day 2. I just hiked down real early in the morning, hike right back up, and the first thing I did was check out the Cole Brothers studio. So this is random, but like right before I left, I was flipping through, and like Channel 13, which is KERA here in Texas, showed a national park documentary, and it was talking about the Grand Canyon, surprisingly, and they had mentioned the Cole Brothers and how like they were kind of like a big reason for tourism in the park. 2 brothers like in the 1900s that took pictures of the whole park, like crazy stuff. Like, you can look them up, and they took pictures of all the mule riders there. Their original studio that's on the side of the canyon is still there. So like the mules back in the day, you can see the same trails they used to take, the same like studio that you can still walk down. They're the guys that originally rafted through the canyon and filmed it like in the 1900s with a big huge camera on their shoulder.
I'm telling you, we were there.
And that film's still playing.
We were there for 5 days, and we could go back for another 5 days and still be just as bewildered and not see everything we wanted to see when we were there.
Did you look into the riding the donkeys?
Yeah, so same thing. I just didn't book it out soon enough.
It's months. Like, actually, I think
So you mentioned
that's years out. I think like a couple years if you want.
I don't honestly know the answer to that question. Maybe we can look it up. I'll get back to you another time. But you mentioned you and Wade are bigger fellas, may not be able to hike to the bottom.
I could get to the bottom easy.
Right?
I could roll the bottom faster than you can. I guarantee it.
There's a mule trip where you can ride the mules down the South Kaibab Trail, the original trail, and you can stay at the bottom, and it's like a tour package, and then ride the mules back up. And that's what they used to do. That's why people started going to the Grand Canyon.
So that's the trail that we hiked when we went, however far we went down, about a mile or so. Just a mile in. Luckily, when we were going down, the mule tours were going down too.
Are they mules or donkeys?
No, they're mules.
They're mules.
We got to listen to them, like listen to the lady give the tour, and we she's telling them, "Hey, look up. There's hieroglyphs here." And we look up, and there's hieroglyphs all over the side of the mountain. Like, I mean, you're not even a mile.
What were
down.
they pictures of? Do you remember?
I have no idea. I have pictures of
I
those
love
pictures,
seeing those
but
for some reason.
yeah, it
Like I
was-
just
Yeah,
think
it's amazing.
So cool to see those in
Yeah.
person.
it was awesome.
So
It was such a cool trip, man. And like, you can go all the way to the south. No, the west side. Like, there's more camping. It's more primitive camping. Like, I want to say it's free. Like, you can just drop in and camp if there's a spot there on the west side
I'm
of
sure
it.
you gotta have a permit.
I think the west side was, because it's unmonitored. Like, there's nobody over on that side, but it fills up all the time.
I think the west side's where they lost Joe Dirt, wasn't it?
Man, probably. There was a plane crash over there. Like, that's the big.
Yeah, it is.
Tour thing
That's
when
all.
they
That
get
if you
over there.
take the east entrance, you'll see the deal for that.
Yeah,
So,
I guess it's the east side, not the west
Yeah,
side.
east side.
You go to the east side.
so the main takeaway from this is you need to plan it a year out.
Yeah, anybody can do this trip, and it is what you make of it.
Yeah.
You could drive in, look over the canyon, the rim, and be like, cool, and leave. Or you could actually invest the time and stay there and have your mind blown. At
Man,
just
you
the
gotta
most
invest your
beautiful
time at that place.
And if you're coming from the other direction, from the north side of it, I would say take the north side entrance into the Grand Canyon, because that seemed way more
Did you do the?
intuitive. But it's hard. You
It'll be
can't get
less
over there.
touristy, but yeah, it's a long way.
Did
to
you
go.
do the touristy like glass bottom thing that goes out in?
That's from. You might have done that, but we didn't. That
I
was
didn't
from
do that.
Vegas.
So that no, that's on like an actual.
That's on part of the Grand Canyon, I thought.
Yeah, but it's not in the national park. So
there's
to
a
go
lot of
do that,
tours.
it's almost like a resort.
Yeah.
You'll have to pay a resort
Oh, I
fee,
see.
and then a fee to do that. It's a whole different
Yeah,
thing.
there's a lot of tours that come from Vegas
But it would
to
be
do
awesome
that,
to do that.
and that's where they do like the helicopter rides, and they do have some.
Yeah, my
helicopter
in-laws
rides there.
did the helicopter ride from Vegas to the Grand Canyon,
Yeah.
and they said it. Apparently, that's a pretty pricey little
Yeah.
trip,
Yeah.
and my father-in-law said it was worth every penny. So it was unbelievable.
Yeah, so I don't know. The biggest takeaways is reserve early, stay at the Mather campground.
Yeah.
If you want to just do a quick little hike, either do the rim trail, which is just walking on the rim, or hike a quick trail down the South Kaibab, and then check out a couple of the historical spots.
Did you have any elk or anything walk through your campsite?
Yep, had an elk come through my
So
camp.
I put up a game camera at my camp.
No, mine was I could have thrown a rock at it.
Yeah, and
crazy.
we had
So
so
the
the
big one?
first day I caught a cow elk and her calf coming through, and then the next day I was like, oh my god, here they are, just walking through like nobody's business.
And one other thing I wanted to talk about was there's a famous woman architect. There we go. Her name is Mary Coulter, and she designed a bunch of buildings there, like the Hopi House, the Hermit's Rest, the Lookout Studio, and then her most famous one is the Desert View Watchtower. And they're just beautiful buildings that they call it like National Park rustic.
Yeah, the Desert View Watchtower is the one on the east side.
And
Like that's where you can go and see
They're
the
old buildings that have stood the test of time, and they're
How old?
beautiful. Same thing, 100 years
like
old.
100 years old.
They're
yeah.
awesome.
Awesome.
You can see like that's where you go and they talk about the plane crash and stuff.
So
You
if
can
you're
see all
not
the
in
way
good
down.
shape, or you're an older person and you don't want to hike to the bottom, you're still going to love the Grand Canyon. If you're adventurous, go float the river, hike to the bottom. There's plenty to do for everybody.
I would say that probably 90% of the people that go to Grand Canyon do not hike to
I
the
think
bottom.
that's actually a real statistic.
Yeah,
Not
like,
many people go past
it
the rim.
is. It is.
There's
hard.
also a statistic about how many people fall in it every year.
I don't know.
No, people go there.
That's
to commit,
every park. Something's
Yeah,
gonna
but people
happen.
go there to commit suicide. Like it's dark. Seriously, they were.
But it's beautiful.
It is
Whoa.
beautiful, but like, people. I mean, the
so that
park
was-
people were telling us like,
It's never going to get any better than this.
See ya.
Yeah, so
What a
that's,
segue
yeah,
into
so that,
our next segment.
yeah, so that was day 1, 2, and 3. The morning of day 3, like I said, quick trip down to the bottom, and then I got on the road. If I would have got a permit, I would have stayed. But since I didn't, I drove through Las Vegas for my first trip ever, which we'll talk about another time when we go into gambling.
Oh, come
That's the first time you've
on.
been to Vegas?
I want to hear
First
about your
time.
first time into Vegas.
Well, maybe you should hit our subscribe button or whatever we have at the point you're listening to this. And when we get to the
Notification.
subject of gambling and whiskey drinking, we'll talk about that one. So my next national park I hit was I went from Texas to Arizona, and I went through Nevada, through the Las Vegas area, and I went through the Northeast and back into Utah. And the first thing, major national park I hit was Zion National Park. So before I went into the Zion National Park, I did a little hike called Kanara Falls. And I was thinking about this earlier, like how I could tell you guys or listeners, and if we ever get a social media account or something, maybe we'll post
We'll
pictures
post
of this,
pictures,
because
for
it
sure.
was beautiful. Kanara Falls is a short 3.5-mile hike right outside the park, where you literally hike up a river into a slot canyon, and it's incredible, beautiful. It's cold, but it's just a short 3.5-mile hike where you're just hiking through the river with canyon walls on either side of you, like 10 feet apart. So it's just old school ladders. It's just a beautiful hike. So after that, did that real quick, and I went into Zion National Park. A while ago, I said the Grand Canyon was an intermediate level park. Zion is an expert level park.
That's when you were telling me the 127 Days movie.
No, not yet.
No, further on.
But Zion, the reason I think it's an expert level park is because whatever reservations you had to have anywhere else, this was amplified. To stay in the park, you basically had to be on the recreation.gov website 2 weeks before the day you wanted to stay, with friends clicking trying to reserve you a spot because it's so popular.
Jeez.
And
That's
there's
intense.
in a lot of national parks, there's a scenic drive through the park. At Zion, the only way to do that scenic drive is on a bus. And the park buses, which are about $1 a ticket, since COVID, are restricted down to about 20% capacity. So about a month out, you have to try to get your ticket on the bus to go do your hikes. There are some other options I'll tell you about in a second, but I don't know. Just the biggest thing is plan this stuff. If you want to go to Zion, get on the recreation.gov website and book your stuff early, and be 2 weeks before and a month out for bus passes. Don't worry if you don't get it. The bus passes, there's other options, but get a campsite.
Zion, that's one our friends went to a couple weeks before you did.
Yep. So the biggest two hikes there are Angel's Landing, which is like they say is the most dangerous hike in the and it's beautiful 4-mile round trip hike, and you literally hike straight up to the top of this landing, and there's a bunch of switchbacks and stuff. They call it Walter's Wiggles.
Walter's Wiggles, huh? Okay.
So say you're real out of shape or you're real nervous, and you're like, I want to do Angel's Landing, but I don't think I can commit to the top. If you get to the top of Walter's Wiggles, there's nothing technical about it. It's literally just willpower. I want to get to the top. And there's a beautiful scenery. And then from Walter's Wiggles to the top, you actually are using chains and steep steps to pull yourself up. It's like rock climbing, kind of. And so that's a really famous one. And then the other famous one is called the Narrows. And that's
Did you ever think you were going to fall off?
No, but I'm way overconfident on stupid stuff. Like, I was telling someone the other day, like, what is wrong with me? I'm like, if I'm on the Grand Canyon and I see an edge and I'm like, this is beautiful,
Let me go out there.
I'm going to take 20 steps for no reason at all and look over the edge of this.
It's redneck confidence.
Yeah, for no reason.
That's how people die.
Yes.
I mean,
For today's sad story. Yeah, so, and then there's also the Narrows, which is a 5 to 9 mile hike, depending on how far deep you go, which is this very similar to Kanara Falls, in that you're hiking through a river, and then, so if it's real cold, you will be cold. And then you're just looking through a slot canyon, and you come back. So what I did is I showed up at the park, got a campsite set up, and just rested at camp. And then, so, quick thing about Angel's Landing is it's really popular. So if you're going to do it, be on the very first bus out every
that's what you
morning.
said. Be there.
So I woke up
early.
at 5 a.m., got on the 6 a.m. bus, and I was the first one on the trail, and just had a most beautiful time, very relaxing. Didn't get caught up in any of the mess. And then on the way down, I could see just hordes of people coming, and so thankful I did it.
Yeah.
So after I did that, right down from that's a smaller trail called the Emerald Pools that I did, and it was just like you hiked up to this bunch. You know how like waterfalls fall down? They form like little pools, I guess. Yeah. And it was just cool seeing them. Had lunch, and
Jump
then
in.
went back to camp and took my first shower in a couple of days.
No, you didn't jump in the pool.
No, it's just all
was
shallow
frowned
stuff.
upon.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that there.
Whammy.
And then
Yeah, if you got a permit to camp, they're not gonna let you bathe in the water.
took
Yeah,
my
permanent
first
take out
shower.
Irish Spring down there and just lather up.
And then went and did a hike called, what was it called? The Canyon Overlook. It's just a little 1 mile hike, but you actually drive up to the top of this thing. So your hike is straight across and you're overlooking this beautiful canyon drop, but you don't have to walk up. You're walking straight.
That sounds like my kind of hike right there.
It's real famous for photographers because of the sunset, and a couple got married while I was up there. Another couple was taking engagement photos.
Oh,
Like, it was
snap.
just cool, you know. It was
Did you have to sign
beautiful.
for witness?
Did you jump in the wedding photos or?
Yes.
Heck
Did you
yeah.
crash it?
Yeah. And then
you can find Danielle on hashtag
So that-
Canyon Trail Weddings.
yeah. That park was beautiful, man. I loved it. I recommend it to everybody. It's going to be a very hiking intensive park. I wouldn't go there just to set up camp and relax at camp. Like, go there to hike and see some incredible scenery because it's beautiful. So that
Awesome.
was like my 5th day into this road trip. I spent, like I said, a day and a half there, and I woke up the next day. And my plan was to hit national parks. So the next one I road tripped up to was Bryce Canyon National Park, and it's a smaller one that's a little less visited.
That's still in Utah.
Yep. So these
Okay.
I'm into the Utah 5 now, which are Zion, Bryce, Capitol Reef, Canyonlands, and Arches. I
Gotcha.
just added the Grand Canyon and a couple others just because that's how it worked out
I mean,
for
you
me.
can't not go to the Grand Canyon. You're driving right by it.
And the Petrified Forest, but the
Right.
5 are the ones I just mentioned in Utah.
Apparently, you can drive by the Petrified Forest because I didn't see it.
Yeah. So Bryce Canyon,
Still there.
it's
I'll go
another
back.
park that's just incredibly beautiful. Lots of different scenery. The big thing to do there is to drive the scenic trail to the back of the park, and you're going to be overlooking just hundreds of thousands of miles of just beautiful country on top of a mountain. You'll be able to see the Grand Staircase National Monument from the end of the park because it's just a sheer edge. It's crazy. Hoodoos everywhere. The biggest thing I did there was I drove the scenic
Who's there?
Can
the
I
hoodoos.
I feel like I need
Google
to
that.
I need to ask what a hoodoo is.
It's a stone structure that's just formed from over time as the canyon developed around it, just the water and stuff hitting it, and the freezing to non-freezing weather hits it. It forms these cool hoodoos. We saw it in Colorado a couple years ago. But
Yeah,
that's what-
but you didn't
Thought they
call it
were
out.
hoodoos.
Oh, okay.
yeah. So
But you
Google
didn't call
image-
that out and be like, "Hey, look, there's a hoodoo."
Yeah, so they're everywhere, and I'll show you pictures of that too. But
That's a fancy term for a pointy rock.
Hoodoo.
so it's a tougher hiking trail, but anybody can do the same thing. The one I did was called the Navajo Loop to the Peekaboo Loop, and it was just a 5-mile trail, and it was probably the most beautiful hike I went on the whole trip because you start on the rim, you hike down, and you're just hiking through this crazy forest of hoodoos the whole time, and then you hike back out and watch the sunset on Sunset Point. So that was one of my favorite experiences. Was that hike? Just
What was the trail we did in Colorado where we drove up? Do you remember what it was? It's in South Fork,
yeah, I
or
know
right
what you're
outside of
talking
South
about.
Fork.
It's right out. Yeah.
It's on your way from South Fork to
Was it a
to
Jeep?
Creed.
Was it a Jeep trail?
Kind of Jeep,
Or
dirt
was it
bike, ATV
four-wheeler?
trail.
It was rough.
Yeah, it was a rough trail.
I've probably been up it.
And
We drove out of South Fork on 4-wheelers and went up those trails.
I ran out of gas and had to bum gas from some guys on a dirt bike and make it back down. But we went up those, so we drove up, and then it's another was a mile.
Yeah. And,
Hike
and
into
same
the-
thing. A lot of hoodoos there.
Yeah, see the hoodoos.
It reminded me a lot of that, except for at Bryce Canyon, you can hike down into them.
That's cool.
And it was beautiful. So if you go to Bryce Canyon, remember to do the Navajo Loop and the Peekaboo Loop. And then one thing I wanted to say is that at the Bryce Canyon, it's first come, first serve camping. And I didn't want to risk it because I didn't want to drive all the way out there and not
you
get a
can't
campsite.
book it out.
No. So right outside the park is this place called Ruby's RV Park. And it's been there forever.
Like a
it's,
KOA campground.
it's
or is
huge.
it
There's a lot of stuff.
Oh, okay.
But they actually have tent campsites there, and so I booked a tent campsite right outside the park at Ruby's RV Park, and they offer showers and laundromat services, and they have RV hookups if you had an RV, and they have a hotel too. So if you wanted a place to stay where you had a sure thing, I highly recommend that place for a place to stay while you're on this trip. So I did the hiking trails I told y'all about, went and took my shower again. I actually did some laundry for the first time in a while. And then slept that night and woke up the next morning and checked out the Grand Staircase National Monument I told y'all about.
Yeah.
It's not one of the technical Utah 5, but I just wanted to go to it because it was on the way. And so while I was there, this is kind of funny. There's a thing called the Peekaboo and the Spooky Slot Canyons.
And this is at the Grand Staircase National Monument.
Right. So I looked it up, and these are slot canyons, like on 127 hours, like where you're on sideways walking through little bitty tiny canyons.
Great movie. Everyone should go see it.
And
A little long.
I told Daniel the other day. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked here. I'll let you get back to your story. Told Daniel the other day I'm a little disappointed because in the movie they used a Leatherman to cut his arm off. Spoiler alert. In the real story, he used a Spyderco knife.
huh.
So, you know, kind of got away from that because Spyderco stock went.
Oh, really?
After that, oh yeah, everybody I knew was like, oh,
So
you got to get Spyderco knives. So you can
go
cut
ahead
your
and
arm
buy
off.
your Outdoor Edge stock right now because let me tell you
Yeah.
how many listeners we have.
All 12 of you go buy Outdoor
My favorite
Edge.
knife for hunting or backpacking is an Outdoor Edge knife. They're small little foldable knives where the blades come off and you can replace the blades if you're in the field. They're super convenient, super lightweight.
They're
So I watched
They're a
100
scalpel.
Yeah, that's basically a scalpel, but it's
Also-
what I highly recommend for any sort of backpacking or camping
I
trip.
just like to say thank you, Wade's family, for listening.
Yeah.
Wade's congregation, while you're here listening,
They
go,
have.
go buy you a Outdoor Edge knife because that's what you need. We're not sponsored by them.
Yeah.
We just really
The
believe in that
majority of
product.
the people that were listening,
They already got them.
they already have Outdoor
Good.
Edge knives.
You guys are awesome.
Yeah, so I brought it with me because I was just randomly thinking about that movie, and I was like, well, I ain't cutting my arm off with some dull little rock knife. If I'm gonna do one, I'm thinking awesome knife. So I brought my Outdoor Edge knife because I
There
was
you go.
dumb.
Well, and if you don't want to pay for the one that has the interchangeable blades, you can buy like 4.
right.
Just 4 knives, and
They're
it's the
super
same.
cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I looked up on YouTube the night before, like, what are the... Because I wanted to make sure I could do these before I went and did them, because I'm not the littlest guy in the world. And everyone said, like, you can do Peekaboo Slot Canyon, but Spooky Canyon, is if you're the least bit big of a guy, don't try it.
And it's kind of spooky.
So I'm 4-mile hike. I made it through Peekaboo, no problem. I get out, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to go look at Spooky. So I go look at it, and the first thing you have to do is crawl down this hole like the size of a manhole in town. And it's like a 10-foot drop into this little slot canyon. And I'm like, screw it. I'm just going to go for it.
What?
So
No.
I just crawled
Can you
down
get
into
back
this.
out?
Nope.
Like if you want to turn around?
Nope. You got to
No
commit.
turn-
So I just
Oh, no,
committed
I'm
to
out.
it.
I'm out.
And I made it through. And I'm, 6 foot 220? 6'1", 220. And I
Yeah.
made it through. So there was one spot at the end that was a little tight. And I had to like get on my hands and knees and crawl sideways. But other than that, it was incredible, man. It was like, I don't know, you're like 20 foot below the surface, crawling through these canyons. Man, it was one
So
of my...
how did you get out? You just walked out the other end, and
Yeah, so at the end of these things, it just kind of
Is it
opens
staircase?
up. No, it just opens up to... You're just out of the canyon.
Oh, okay.
You're just walking at that
You're
point.
just not there anymore.
Yeah.
Just a walk.
So if you don't want to
brisk
do that, you can just bypass... There's a whole bunch of other hikes on the National Monument. The main thing is just to drive Highway 12. It's a beautiful highway. And what I actually did is I bypassed Highway 12 on the Devil's Backbone. And it's just a dirt road that goes through the mountains over like an old bridge. Lots of cool history behind it. But, I don't know. It was pretty cool.
Make sure you're in a Subaru.
Yeah. So then I go and camped on the side of the road at some government campsites that night. Just pulled over, slept in the car. And the next day I drove through Capitol Reef National Park. This is what the next couple, I would honestly consider them beginner national parks. Capitol Reef, you just kind of chill. Take the scenic drive to the back of the park. There's a very short 1-mile hike at the end of it that you can hike, and it's just straight, no elevation change, no nothing. Like elderly can do it, older weight people can do it. You can just walk down, take it easy, come right back. And what that hike is kind of cool. It's like how the original settlers in the area would come through this giant canyon, and they would write their names on the wall, like scratch their names into the stone. And these things are 100 foot high, these walls, and you can just see names from 100 years ago that are scribed with the dates that they came through that area, like a toll booth. It's pretty cool.
do you recognize any of the names?
Yeah. So Wade Davis III.
I mean, you didn't see like
Great ancestors from
Yeah.
D. Boone or anything on there?
Yeah. Got lost. If anyone's seen the Alamo, please let me know. And then the other thing they're famous for is the fruit orchards. They have a whole bunch of fruit orchards everywhere, and they serve pies at the Giffords house. So most people just kind of take the scenic route.
And
They'll
then eat
have
pie.
some pies, and then the biggest trail that's there is called the Cassidy Arch, which is a 3-mile round trip. Beautiful arch. But yeah, it's a pretty chill day. So I just saw that morning and then jetted out of there and drove over to Moab to set up camp on some more government land, which is just free BLM campsites. And then Canyonlands was the final, or the next to the last day. And there's 3 sections to the park. There's the Needles, the Maze, and there's Islands in the Sky. And if you're taking your first trip ever to Canyonlands, what I did and what I'm going to recommend everyone do is go to Island in the Sky. That's where another thing is you can just drive the scenic
Sounds like a
overlook.
Jimmy Buffett song.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You're on top of the whole
Or
thing.
a Kenny Rogers song.
There you go.
Island in the sky. This is who.
I got my Kenny Rogers hair going on right now. So
Yeah, it looks good. I wish I
Chicken
had
sounds
hair.
good.
Chicken sounds good.
Kenny Rogers chicken.
we don't have that here.
Oh, okay.
Chicken Express only.
Yeah, we'll start adding that to instead of the drink of the day. Wade's random thought of chicken of the day.
Wade's random fried chicken for the day.
It's delicious.
So I didn't have any chicken at Canyonlands, but we did see some cool sights. The biggest thing there is to
We went from Island in the Sky to Kenny Rogers chicken.
No, you went from Islands in the Sky
Oh,
to
yeah.
Kenny's fried chicken. And the rest of us were
Just think how much better this amazing trip you would have went on if you could have got some Kenny Rogers chicken.
just had fried chicken and watched the sunrise over Mesa Arch.
Are you saying that it's better than Chicken Express though? Because that's the real question.
I actually don't know if I've ever been to Kenny Rogers chicken. There's not. You said there's not any around
There's
here.
no, they're not around here at all.
And Chicken Express is good,
Hold on what you're about to say right now.
but
Be careful.
Golden Chick has them beat.
I'm about to throw hands.
Nah, I agree.
No,
Chicken.
I'm
The
about to
Golden
throw
Chick
hands.
sandwich that has one roll on top, 3 chicken strips in the middle, and then another roll on bottom.
I never heard of that.
That's why I
don't-
can't hike
what
these
is
big
that?
trails you're talking
What
about.
is that?
It's the chicken or the Golden Chick sandwich. It has one of the rolls on top, chicken strips in the middle,
Boosh.
and they used to put some sort of sauce on it. Now you have to ask for it, but
Yeah, I
It's
never heard
delicious.
that at all.
what are y'all doing after the podcast?
Yeah, finding one of those, I
Guess
guess.
we're going to Golden Chick. Stay tuned, people.
Yeah. So off the topic of chicken
Sorry, Daniel.
is the Canyonlands National Park, and like I said, y'all could do this one too, even with your chicken in hand. You could walk through the Mesa Arch sunrise. That's where everybody goes to watch the sunrise. It's a very short little half-mile hike that's no elevation, and that's where everyone goes to watch the sunrise. And the way it hits this arch is just incredible. Just Google Mesa Arch, and it'll pull up some sunrise images. You'll see photographers everywhere. And then after that, what I did is I just drove to all the scenic overlooks. There's short little hikes from the truck. And then I did 2 hikes, the Upheaval Dome and the Aztec Butte Trail, which are just, I think both of them are less than 2 miles. And all you do is just hike up and see some beautiful sights and some Indian houses at the top of Aztec Butte Trail and hike back down. One thing I wanted to mention about Canyonlands is it's a place where if you go for the first time, you're going to think it's the most incredible thing ever, but you're going to be like, you're not going to do much if you don't get down in the canyon. Like if you have a 4x4 truck, the thing I recommend doing is after the day is hopping on Schaefer Road. It's a 4x4 trail that leads to Moab. It's 18 miles, but it takes you 3 hours. It's not technical or anything. It's just bumpy, a lot of switchbacks and stuff. Just look up images of Schaefer Road. It's incredible. So that's pretty cool. And then like canyoneering and mountain biking are real famous there. Whole Moab's just an adventure town like you've never seen.
Canyoneering?
That is 127 hours where he was hiking
Oh, okay.
and he
He was
rappelled
hiking
down
more.
into canyons and you can go swimming and stuff. It's just a way to explore more of
Yeah.
the park that you can't see from up here. You'll see some
I've heard of
beautiful
that, but
sights.
I've never heard that term.
But you're not going to get as into the park as you need to go, you know. And then after you get to Moab, have a cool beer at the brewery, have a burger, and go to your campsite. And then the final thing that I did was when I went to Arches National Park, which was one of the more beautiful parks that I went to the whole trip. One thing I got to say is I had to leave that afternoon, so I woke up early and had breakfast and packed up all my campsites, which got me to the park at 9. And it took me about an hour to get into the park because that line's so long. You need to get there early and get in because that line's going to take forever. Just a fun fact about that.
Fun fact.
Yeah, so the big things to do inside Arches National Park that you have to do is Delicate Arch. That's the arch you see on the Utah license plate. That's real famous.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do that at sunset. So you do the Canyonlands, which is right next to Arches. You do Canyonlands and you do Mesa Arch for sunrise, and then you go to Arches and you do Delicate Arch for sunset. It's just the way. It's just the lighting. It's beautiful. And then at the back of the park is Devil's Garden Hike, and from there it's about a 2-mile hike to Landscape Arch, which is really, really famous, and then 4 miles to Double O Arch. Lots of stops in that park, lots of roadside stuffs. Besides, like I said, Zion, most of this stuff, if you didn't want to hike, if you were older or pulling a trailer or had kids, you can see them from the car. You know, you can
Yeah.
and you can see some beautiful country without getting out too far. And that's the 5 national parks. I don't know if y'all have any questions or learned anything or didn't learn anything or have. But to finish that circle, what some people will do, and I couldn't do because of COVID. A lot of the like reservations are closed right now. They'll go down to Monument Valley in Antelope Canyon, which is back in Arizona, and they'll make a circle. So you'll do like the Grand Canyon, Las Vegas, and then you'll hit Zion, Bryce, Capitol Reef, Canyonland Arches, and then you'll come back through Monument Valley and Antelope Canyon and fly home. But I wanted to go see my grandpa, so after Arches, I drove straight across Colorado back to Texas and hung out with my grandpa for the night at Tex Line.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, man, it was an awesome trip. 3,500 miles, 12 days, 8 national parks. It was awesome.
So, my biggest takeaways from this amazing trip that you went on, not only is these national parks beautiful, and you need to have enough time to spend there so that you can kind of soak in all that beauty and the adventure that goes along with that, but also the planning is key. And it may be like long-term planning. You may be 6 months to a year out planning these trips to get the reservations you need. What was the website? Recreational.
Recreation.gov.
Recreation.gov. We'll have those in our comment sections. But we're going to try something new here. And Bare Hands Podcast is going to throw a commercial your way.
We're semi-sponsored.
Yep,
We'll be
taking a
right
quick
back.
break.
And we're back. And I'm going to tell you, I use that product. I camp with that product. I eat that product. I will drink that product. That's how committed we are to this product at Bare Hands Podcast.
Whatever that product is.
Thank you for
Just-
coming.
just
Thank you for coming
covering-
back from the commercial break.
Yeah.
Covering everything about that product right here.
So before the commercial break, which was intriguing,
Hella long.
we were talking about Daniel's trip and the takeaways we got from that. One of the takeaways, obviously, being prepared as far as scheduling, maybe 6 months to a year out, your reservations. But even more importantly than that, because once you start camping, you need to be prepared with your gear. You need to be prepared with how your food supply is, how you're going to replenish that food supply. But just some standard gear. If you're going to do something like what Daniel was talking about, like hiking down a canyon and hiking back up all in one day, or hiking down, spend the night and hiking back up the next day. You're going to start with the way I pack is I start with my bag and I go, in order from head to toe as far as your clothes,
Right.
things like that. So if we start with the bag, what are your suggestions with the bag, Daniel?
So, like I said, if you're going to actually do backpacking, like down to the bottom of the canyon or an overnight trip, it's just completely different than out of your truck or what we're used to. So you're going to need your backpack, whether it be a 60-liter bag or however big a bag you got. And bare minimum, you need a lightweight tent. They always say like go up one person. So if you're a one person, get a 2-person tent. If it's you and your bride, get a 3-person tent, real lightweight one. It's all about weight when you're backpacking. So you need a backpack, a lightweight tent. You need a sleeping bag and a sleeping pad. And that's just a real inflatable sleeping pad that you just blow up yourself that you can lay on. And then you need a jet boil, which is just a little device that heats up water so that you can pour it into your mountain.
That doesn't help you like move down the canyon or move back up the canyon.
No, we haven't got there yet.
Okay.
All a jet boil is going to do is heat up your meals. So like the Mountain House meals that are dry, that are frozen.
Also, I
Not
went a full
frozen,
week
but-
in Colorado with no sleeping mat.
It was miserable.
Oh, it was terrible, but I made it. You can do it without it.
It's just not fun.
But
You're here to
you're-
produce after that
You're
week.
gonna hurt.
Yeah, so you need your backpack, your tent, your sleeping pad, your sleeping bag, your jet boil, some water bottles for your water, and then your Mountain House meals, which you're going to eat probably, and then your water purification system. And the only other thing that I was thinking of that you might need is a headlights that night, something to help you see
Headlights are
Flashlight,
crucial, man.
for any
headlamp.
sort of camping.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it frees up your hands and you can still see.
So like backpacking is overwhelming, but there's really not much to it. I mean, like I said, it's just those like 7 things. You just want to be lightweight because everything you're taking with you is on your back. So yeah,
And so the
that's
number
it.
the number 2 thing you talked about, well, number 1's backpack, and then your tent. So if we talk canvas tent versus nylon tent, if you're backpacking, you're probably going to want to go with nylon just for the lightweight.
Yep.
But if given the choice and weight is not a consideration, I would go with canvas every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
If you're sleeping out of your truck or,
Yeah.
Yes.
Daniel and I both have canvas tents, and they are the best tents I've ever had.
Well, and, the last time I went camping was my elk hunt, and we horsebacked in. Of course, they had the tents set up and everything, and those canvas tents were, because they had little stoves in them, and they held heat, kept the cold out, kept the weather out.
We camped in Colorado, and, I brought stuff to heat the tent up. But honestly, me and the wife and the kiddos staying in there, I never cranked the heat up the whole time because they hold heat so well.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about them. They breathe well. They're waterproof. They're very easily insulated. Now, the problem with them that they're calling, they do cost more money.
More money.
And they're heavy.
They're heavy, and they're going to be a lot more maintenance. So, like a nylon tent at the end of a camping trip, you can usually just roll it back up in your bag and throw it in your truck. With a canvas tent, since it is canvas, it'll get mold on it. So what you have to do is you have to come back home and you have to actually set it back up and let that thing air out and completely dry out before you store it. So it does have some cons, but overall, it's going to last you your whole life if you take care of it.
So inside the tent, you said you made it a week without any kind of air mattress or pad or anything like that.
4 days or 5 days, whatever it was. Yeah, and we made it without. But
that sounds miserable.
It was terrible, and we were in Colorado, which is the rocky state. So we were sleeping. I was sleeping on rocks, and it was the worst sleep I've had in a very long time.
I prefer a cot with a mat on it, like
for
that.
An air mattress. That's just me.
The only thing I hate about the air mattresses is you could wake up in the middle of the night on the ground.
Yeah.
A cot, you're probably not going to wake up on the middle of the ground.
Luckily for me, my truck has a plug-in.
Yeah.
So if I can get to a point where my truck is close enough.
And that's another thing about being prepared too.
Yeah, you plug it in, or if you have an outlet or something, you can leave it plugged in and it's fine. But if you're not in that situation, definitely bring a mat.
So what kind of sleeping bags do y'all prefer to put on whatever type of mat you bring? I actually have it's a canvas on the outside.
Flannel on the inside.
Yeah, and flannel on the inside.
That's what I got too.
It's
the best one.
It's a super duper one. My brother sleeps in a mummy, and my brother's 6'5", 270, and he sleeps in a mummy, and I don't know how he does it.
I can't do this.
It seems miserable to me.
Yeah, so the reason that people have mummies is because they are so lightweight.
Right.
If you're going to go on a backpacking trip, you're going to bring a mummy.
Yep.
And it's just because it's a very thin, mostly the insulation is coming from air inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the only reason you'd want one. Like for me personally, like if I'm sleeping in my canvas tent by my truck, I'm probably going to blow up an air mattress because I have like a small one that just plugs into the cigarette lighter. But I'm also like Wade. I don't mind cots as long as I have a cot pad on top. That weird fabric being so tight is not comfortable at all. No. So throw a cot pad down. And then if I'm sleeping in a tent, similar to y'all too, I also have a canvas bag with a flannel liner, and it's a 0 degree bag, so which means down to 0 degrees, and I love it.
Mine too. But as a bigger dude, the nylon sleeping bag, man, I end up throwing that thing everywhere and rolling up in it. And
so me and Darren both have Kodiak canvas tents, and
so awesome.
Love them. Highly recommend them. I was just playing on their website the other day. They have Kodiak canvas sleeping bags too.
Oh, really?
So that they go above to your shoulder, to your chest level, and you know how sometimes you don't want your arms tucked into that thing because it's weird. It's a big head region where you can tuck your arms into pads beside your head. It's hard to explain, but everything can get covered up without being a mummy.
I mean, what I like the
kind of like a sleeping bag straight jacket.
Yes, it's pretty cool though.
Yeah.
I'm interested in it.
The Kodiak tent's like 6 bars to put the tent up.
Yeah, it's not much. It's super simple.
It's really easy to do, and you can do it by yourself. And
how long are you camping that you need 6 bars?
I mean, 4 or 5 days.
No, okay.
Yeah.
2 a day.
Historically, 2 a day.
So, you got your air mattress, your cot, your sleeping pad, sleeping bag, pillows, lawn chairs. My favorite place to get a lawn chair now, which hopefully will be a sponsor soon. Buc-ee's has excellent lawn chairs.
Best place ever.
They even come with a little side table.
Okay, though, Okay, though. I love Buc-ee's. But Field and Stream right now has a director's chair. It's just like the Buc-ee's chair, that comes out. But it sits about a foot taller. I like it because I can sit next to all the other soccer dads in my kids' game.
And look down on them.
Look down on them. Be way up in the air. Yeah.
Real power move.
It is. It is.
But the bad thing about Lucky's, the bad thing about Buc-ee's is just like the canvas tents, just like the big fluffy sleeping bags, they're not lightweight.
Right.
And so, if you're,
it's a truck camping thing.
yeah, it depends on what kind of,
or
we've
you're
talked
setting
about
up a
this
drop
over.
camp out in the middle, like you're elk hunting, and you're setting up your canvas tent. Same thing.
Right.
You're right next to your vehicle.
Right.
So I was at Buc-ee's the other day, and for those who are not from Texas,
Who wasn't?
it's like a Walmart for a gas station, but they have
We have the
their
biggest
lawn
gas
chairs out
stations.
front. But
I
they
feel
also,
like you're underselling it by saying it's like a Walmart.
I love Walmart.
Yeah, but people.
Yeah, but
people
people have
that
a
are not-
negative connotation. It's like
People
a,
that are not from Texas.
it's like a
don't
Walmart
have-
with the bathrooms in Buc-ee's are cleaner than the ones at your home.
That's
Listen,
true.
I've been to
And-
I've been to a lot of states. I'm telling you right now, no state does a gas stations bigger than the state of Texas.
It's awesome.
Buc-ee's is the biggest gas station you'll ever come across. It has the coolest stuff you'll ever come across. Like, bar none, Texas is sold on gas stations. We got them.
It's the best. That's why I highly recommend right out front next to lawn chairs. It's a little camp chair that goes with it.
Yeah.
And so then, so you got your lawn chairs. Then we go to kind of just some random stuff as far as your lighting, your heaters.
Yeah, we already mentioned the headlamps.
The
Bring
headlamps.
those, even no matter what camping you're doing.
No matter
Just
what
put one
kind
in
of
your glove
camping,
box.
you should put one in your door of your
It's
truck
just
because,
it's a dad move to have a headlamp.
well, plus
It's
it
a manly
also
thing.
it also forces you to wear your hat backwards. So not only are you hands free, but you look pretty
But
cool
you
doing
look
it.
cool
There you go.
doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think the headlamp is a must, whether you're camping or just living the manliest life you could possibly
living a
live.
good life for sure.
Propane heaters, paper towels, toilet paper. I don't know that there's a decent campsite in the United States without a set of dominoes.
Right.
You need
Oh, for sure.
something.
Some kind of cards, dominoes.
If you're a real city slicker, you're gonna be amazed at how early the sun goes down. And now what do we do?
Right.
And so if you want to stay up past 7 o'clock,
Campfire,
then
headlamps.
campfire and some dominoes is definitely the way to go there. Cleaning yourself. Got man wipes.
Yeah,
If
so
you-
that's what I take with me when I'm backpacking. And,
Yeah.
And it's just like a little alcohol type wipe. It's just a man wipe, and you can give yourself a little bath.
Yeah.
And
We called them bird baths.
Wade's grandma, plug your ears.
The real name is
There's also a
whore bath.
whore bath.
Yeah, the real name is a whore bath.
And that's where you just boil
Is that a
some
kind
hot
of bird?
water. Yeah.
It's a bird. It's a kind of
Okay.
bird.
You can
Good.
boil some hot water and then wipe yourself clean and then rinse yourself off.
Yeah.
So I'm 6 years old, and we're staying in Creed, Colorado,
Okay.
and we borrowed a family's RV, and we stayed there for a week. And I'm a 6-year-old boy, obviously, and so taking a shower was not on my list of things to do.
Yeah.
So I think I took 2 showers. The first shower, I insisted on washing my hair, and we had to boil water in order to take a shower. My dad builds this thing around a tree, 5-gallon bucket with a garden hose and the little sprayer on the end of the garden hose. I run out of hot water to rinse my hair. Had to go cold water. So since I do have 4 daughters and a wife, I've heard of this thing called dry shampoo.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
It's a
like,
thing now.
Unless
Well, that's
you're,
the thing when I was a kid. I
Yeah.
got thrown into the Colorado
So-
River quite a bit.
if you, what's that word you've been using the whole time for fancy?
Bougie.
Yeah. So if you're
Bougie.
that, you could throw some of that in there too. It's obviously lightweight and stuff. And then what I consider the most important part, and why y'all were so concerned about whether I could hike down a trail or not, is cooking and food at your campsite. Man, this is where me and my family excel at camping.
Yeah.
Because the turkey fryer burners, huge cast iron skillets. There's 7 of us, and we're making enough food for 20.
Outdoor cooking has become my specialty for camping reasons.
Plus, it's a lot of fun, man. Like we've talked about before, sharing a meal together is a spiritual experience, especially when you're in the outdoors, doing things that you love to do. So, I like cast iron, but obviously if you're backpacking, I don't think Daniel has climbed down many canyons with cast iron strapped to his back. That seems counterproductive.
It's a little hard to do.
Yeah.
If
The
you're
only
going to climb
kind of
back up,
cooking you're doing when you do that is either going to be
With the jet stuff.
snacks or
Yeah.
jet bowls where you're just
Right.
heating stuff up. Yeah, you're not cooking.
Right. So, these are for your drop camps, or you're camping next to your truck somewhere close. Cooler storage. Yeti lost its patent several years ago, so there's definitely some cheaper options as far as coolers are concerned that are decent and good coolers. Man, and that kind of takes us, Daniel. You good with what we covered there?
The only thing I think I wanted to mention to everybody is, like, as a man or a friend or something, if you're introducing someone to the outdoors, or your wife or your kids, and you love it, and you may be more used to roughing it than the average person, then they may not be. So think about spoiling them. Yeah, you can sleep on the ground just fine, but your wife ain't gonna want to. And if you want her to go back camping again, bring a blow-up air mattress so she's comfortable.
Yes.
And your kids may not like taking cold showers, so maybe invest in like a system with some propane that just heats up the water so that they have a memorable experience, because we want you to have a good time.
or just make sure you book a campground that has shower, bathroom,
And those are
facilities.
And one pro tip that I wanted to mention is buddy heaters.
Yeah.
They're little small heaters you can get anywhere. Those like green little Coleman bottles plug
Propane,
right into them.
yeah.
Or there's little 10-foot hose attachment, so you can set up a bottle outside your tent. And say you take your family taking to Colorado, like, I don't want them to get cold. Like, I just want to spoil them. I'll turn the heater on inside the tent, and with that big 5-gallon propane tank outside and that canvas tent retaining heat, they'll stay warm all night. So that's just a pro tip as a buddy heater.
We
with a 10-foot
almost set a deer stand on fire with a propane heater because I was trying to keep my girls warm,
Yeah.
because I wanted them to enjoy it.
Right.
Like you want
it's
them
worth
to.
Yeah,
You
you
want them
can
to feel
rough it.
comfortable.
And you
It's
don't
worth
need the
being
necessities. We get it. We're all men. But if you're taking a woman or your kids
Yeah.
camping, think about them. That's
Or
all.
your buddy that's never been camping before.
I mean,
Right.
even
You
if
know.
you're camping next to the
We'll tell
truck,
that story
or
another time.
If you're camping next
Yeah,
to the
that's
truck
a
or
good one.
whatever, like, I mean, there's no reason not to take that stuff, right? I mean,
Especially if you're out of your truck.
yeah, you have the
Yeah.
room to bring it, and you can take it with you. There's no reason not to be semi-comfortable while you're doing it and enjoy it yourself.
And speaking of comfort
Yep.
and choking,
Yeah.
speaking of comfort and camp food,
Yeah, yeah.
that's or beverage, that brings us to the producer's corner.
Producer's cooking corner.
What you gonna tell us about, Darren?
So, we're going to talk a little about coffee. All right.
Like Keurigs?
Like I said earlier, it's a little bougie for camping. Okay. No, we're going to talk about campfire coffee, or cowboy coffee, as most people like to call it. If you really want to get into this and you want to know a lot more about it than what I'm going to tell you, you should look up a YouTube video by Ken Rollins. He Rollins. He does a really good video about cowboy coffee. The biggest thing here, right, is to get you a percolator or a what do they call those things?
Just a 3-quart coffee pot.
It's just it's an old school coffee pot, right? And what you're doing is you're boiling coffee, right? So instead of your traditional drip coffee, you're running coffee through the grounds and dripping it into your, either through your Keurig or into your coffee pot. You're actually get your water in your coffee pot, get it warm, put your coffee grounds into it, and let it bring it to a boil, right? Two things you're doing is
So you're
is
pouring the coffee grounds directly into the water.
directly into the water. You're getting it warm first, right? And what you get to do is cook those grounds up, depending on how ground your coffee is. If you do it yourself, it's a rough ground. If you buy it, fine ground, whatever. You're taking a lot of the acidic out of the coffee. So if you're somebody who gets heartburn from drinking coffee, if you're somebody who gets stomach aches from getting coffee, or that like punch in your gut and like you got to go run to the restroom real quick after drinking coffee, this will help out a lot, right? Take your water, get it warm, put your grounds in it after it's warm. Watch Ken Rollins' video for all the
It's a
measurements. He has all those
Kent.
in there. Ken.
Not unless you mean Kent.
I think it's just Ken. Is it Kent Rollins or Ken Rollins?
This is Ken.
I thought it was just Ken.
One day we'll have him on as a guest.
Oh,
we're
man.
going to look it up. Oh, man.
That's
that,
one
that
we
would
would-
be
An episode,
fantastic.
we'll
That
just
would be
do
cool.
Ken Rollins.
Yeah, no. It is Kent Rollins. Wrote
Always
that
call
down
him
wrong.
Ken.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
That's
y'all,
okay.
y'all know him.
That's fine.
Like
We
y'all
know
are
everybody.
friends.
Yeah, we know
Yeah.
who.
His
we know
friends
who
call
he
him
is.
Ken.
His friends call him Ken.
Oh, Ken.
Yeah, old Kent. No, Kent Rollins. KentRollins. But he's got the YouTube video on how to do it. So if you want measurements, he describes measurements, how much you need to do. If you can't get the big pot that he's got, he tells you what the ratios are. So look that up. But the best thing is that it helps with acid reflux. It helps with indigestion. If you cook coffee this way, over fire, bring it to a boil. Let it boil for, he says, 3 to 4 minutes, depending on how strong you like it. If you want it a little stronger, cook it a little longer.
That should be a bumper sticker.
There you go.
If
I like
you want it stronger,
If you
cook
want
it longer.
Stronger, cook it longer. I like it. And then set it off to the side and let it cool down. The big key here is once you get your coffee cooked and boiled, right? Take cold water in another pot and pour it over your already cooked coffee.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is, one, you're cooling your coffee down so it's drinkable because it was just 212 degrees and it was boiling. And you're pushing all the grounds down to the bottom of the coffee pot. Right? So you shouldn't have any floating grounds. You shouldn't have anything disturbing your regular cup of coffee. Let that sit for another, 3 or 4 minutes.
On the fire or cooling off?
Cooling off to the side. After you've added the water, and then just pour your coffee and drink it.
Pretty
And that's-
simple.
that's
I mean,
it.
anybody can do it. You just need
Yeah.
a pot and coffee and water.
It's not hard. You can use a pot. You can use a percolator.
And
You can
open
use
fire.
open fire. You can use a stove. You can do it in your house. Get away from the traditional, Starbucks style coffee.
And nothing says camping like boiling coffee.
Oh yeah,
That's awesome.
It is. Even if you don't like coffee, in that experience, you're going to like coffee.
good.
Yep.
I don't know about you guys. Every time I do it, it's so hot. I can't drink it. Like I pour it and I have to wait an hour before I can drink my coffee. So it gives me time to really wake up before my coffee wakes me up.
Sounds awesome. I'm
Sounds
already looking
delicious.
forward to camping again.
Yeah.
Daniel, I'm glad the Grand Canyon didn't get you, man.
Yeah, Wade,
Yeah. No
Darren,
kidding.
I truly have a passion for traveling, national parks, camping, doing cool stuff. So I hope that is portrayed onto y'all. Wasn't too boring. Hope y'all learned something.
No, it's
It was
y'all-
awesome.
Feeling inspired. Anybody can do this stuff. Just listen to Wade's tips and stop making up excuses and go.
Just go.
just go camping.
Speaking of going,
Deuces.
see y'all next
Yeah,
week.
later.